This is going to be the continuation for the previous idle video, idle part 2, I guess, for looking at the idle tables and how it's all working together. I ran out of time on the last one. I can only do 2 gig here at a time for audio and video before it cuts me off and it won't save it. So I got shut off on time. Sorry about that. But anyway, we're continuing the idle from the previous video. I'm not even going to go over the other stuff. If you don't know where we're at or why these things are where they're at, watch the previous videos and you'll know exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it. But anyway, I explained it, I thought, pretty well in the last video. So let's start looking at a finalized product of what we're going to do with idle. Let's say we set this over here. I'm just going to, exactly like I was going to do it in a car. Let's say our fuel map is pretty close. We're within ballpark range of AFRs. I'm going to set this, our target, I'm going to set it to 1100. And I'm going to go over here to 1100, and let's say my air over here, I'm targeting 1100, and let's say my engine speed is at 1000, so I'm going to raise it up until I start, my air duty is getting closer and closer to 0, and I'm getting closer and closer to 1100 here, and so let's say right there is dead on at 1100, okay? I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to just use my negative value, and I'm going to drop it down to 1050, okay? Go back over here to 1000, and let's say I'm at 980 or something like that, so I'm lower than what I'm supposed to be. So I'm going to raise it up just a few until my idle target matches my engine speed, okay? So now my 1050 is good. So I'm going to go back over here, I'm going to drop it down to 950, okay? So here's my 900. I'm going to pull it back up a little bit. Let's say it's low. Pull it up to about there. Okay, smooth that out just a little bit. So I'm going to assume that these are lower because with each lower idle target, it's going to require less work to get there. With a higher idle target, it's going to require more work. That's why these are higher than this. Okay, so everything from 1100 down is almost right on the money. So I'll go back over here and I'll target, let's do 1200, okay? And it's a little low, let's just pretend it's a little low, so I'll raise it up to about there. And then I do the same thing with 1300, and it's about there. So this is our finalized idle map, okay? Nice, smooth transitions, and then we can go over here to idle target and do whatever we want. We can do 1125, and boom, engine speed right at our target. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to look at this ignition versus idle RPM. What this does is it either adds or subtracts ignition timing given the idle target air. So if I'm below my idle target air, so let's say this represents 1000 and I'm actually at 975, which would be negative 25, okay? This is actually adding 2 degrees of timing to try and slant us back to our 1000, okay? So when you raise timing, it will increase your idle. Now whether it's 2 degrees or 3 degrees or 5 degrees is dependent on your setup. But I'm just going to jump real quick here. What I end up doing on almost every single car, and the only thing that will change will be how aggressive this slant is I go over here to this value and I set it to 20. I go over here to this value and I set it to negative 20. Okay, I select the whole thing and I interpolate it. That right there is a pretty good starting point. That's, you're probably not going to have to change that much. You might see something like, you know, set this value to 8, and then you set this value to negative 8. So you get, you know, like a more aggressive slope there, to where it's pulling and adding more timing to get you back to the corner, or to your idle target there. But most of the time, plug these numbers in, and it's not good to rely on a whole bunch of ignition to get you back there. This is just kind of like that last little thing that will tilt you in the right direction and help keep you there. So now we've got this set up. Now, in my previous videos, you guys remember me talking about I want the throttle percent at specifically around 1% when you're not touching it. Why? This is why. This is the main reason why. Okay. What this graph is throttle percent versus the RPM offset TPS. Okay, so given a certain throttle percent, you're at 1% throttle, it offsets your idle target by however much you are on this y-axis. So if I'm at 1%, let's say I'm targeting, we'll just make these real simple values. I'm targeting 1,000. I'm targeting 1,000 RPMs at idle. And everything is right. And if I go back to this one, and I move, and we're at 1%, and I move this up just once, and make it to 25, you'll see your idle target jump to 1025, okay, just by doing this, alright? So, a really good way to help with engine decel off those, you're ripping on it in fourth gear, and then you let off, and it hits all that vacuum at one time, and your engine's working really hard, and then it's not, that big transition. This graph right here helps a lot with that. And normally what I end up doing is it looks something like this. I set this at about, 300 something, and then everything to about the right of, about 3%. You can do 4% if you want. What is this, 500, a value of 500 here. Just select the whole rest of the right side of the map and make it the same value. You don't need to be throwing crazy offsets out here at throttle percent. It doesn't help. It doesn't do anything. It actually messes with the decels. It'll hang and acts really weird. But this right here, this transition right here helps a lot with those decels. And in those other videos, you see guys are just like, well, throw it at 2 or 3%. Well, when you do that, this right here really starts messing with your idle target, because even though you're targeting 1,000, this is adding into on top of it. So now, even though I'm at 1,000, my idle target would now be 150 above. If I was at 1% throttle, it would now be at 1150, and that's what I would target. Okay, so what we're going to do is you keep 1% pretty much at 0. 0 to 1 is at 0. But then right as you start approaching 2, you start getting those real slight 25, 50, 75 increases. And it makes a really smooth transition back into idle off of throttle. It provides an offset, kind of like a buffering zone, back into idle. Okay? And that's why that TPS percent is so important. And when it changes from day to day, you might notice your idle changes, your idle target changes. Like, well, today my car was at 1050, yesterday my car was at 975. Well, if you look at your TPS values, you'll notice that your target is actually dependent upon what your throttle is doing. But it's kind of a give and take. If you set this up, you'll be a lot happier with your transition back into idle in your day-to-day idle, and it will be very consistent. You won't have to worry about it decelling and falling on its face and things like that. These guys that run ID 2000s and they're trying to target 750 RPMs idle, don't let those videos fool you. They do not run 750 day to day to day to day or 800 RPM idle targets, and it's consistent every day. Does not happen. Not with an AEM EMS V2. With some of the aftermarket systems, you can get a lot closer. You can get it down to low 900s, and it's pretty consistent. But from day to day to day to day, they're working really hard to let the car not decel. So just remember that. So here's this graph right here, and then RPM offset versus start. I'm just going to tell you the values that's really going to, you can play with these as much as you want, but what I do is I do at least 11 to 12 seconds. And I usually offset it about 150. And then I keep it the same for about 4 seconds to 5 seconds. And then what I do is I tailor it off to about 12 seconds. And then after 5 seconds of the motor starting, it's targeting 150 above. Once it passes 5 seconds, where it's entered into past the cranking stage, which I think is 350 or 400 RPM, then it starts trailing back down. So after 12 seconds of the motor running, you're now at your actual idle target. Okay. Let's get that one back there. Okay. I'm actually running out of time again, so I'm going to continue the idle discussion in the next video with all of these options for your idle and explain what each one of them does and how to go about getting them dialed in, as well as AC idle trims and idle trims. This one down here for like VSS trims and whatnot. See you in the next one, guys. Thanks for watching.